Hello everyone, my name is Dave, partner, and welcome to your third tutorial on Angular 2. Alright, in this tutorial, before we dive right into the development of Angular 2, we need to run a quick overview of TypeScript, since I told you that Angular 2 was built on top of TypeScript by default. And TypeScript is Microsoft's extension of JavaScript. JavaScript, the traditional JavaScript, most people code, the highest version in it is ECMAScript 5. Alright, that is ECMAScript 5. That's the highest version. This is the version that came out before 2015, before the year 2015. But since 2015, a new version of JavaScript came out, and it is called ES6. That is ECMAScript 6. The only problem with this version of JavaScript is that most browsers has not adopted it. All right, so you need to have, if you're writing or coding in ECMAScript 6, you still need to compile it to normal JavaScript, so that, which is ES5. You need to compile it down to ES5 so that the browser can interpret it. So Microsoft took this ES6 came with so many features and modifications. You understand, the extended features. So Microsoft simply took it and extended it again with a programming language called TypeScript. So they built TypeScript out of ES6 JavaScript. So in TypeScript, they fixed some errors and they took advantage of the new features that came with ES6. Okay, so in this tutorial, I'll give you a run through. I've typed out some code which we'll delete at the end of this tutorial. The code is not supposed to be in this file, but I just wrote it here. So I'll give you a run through of some of the slight modifications and the main key areas of TypeScript we'll be using mostly in Angular JS. Okay, all right. I've written a book on this, and if you want to pre-order at the end of the day, you will just send an email to dave@gmail.com so you can pre-order a book on it. All right. Okay, so here we are. The first thing you need to know is the scope of variables in variable scope and declaration in JavaScript and in TypeScript is a little different. All right, in JavaScript, if you do something like this, if you build a for loop and you declare the variable here, this variable will be available here. So variable J will be available here. You can use J inside here. But the problem with JavaScript is that variable J will still be available outside here. So this is a kind of this will kind of cause trouble in your code. If you need to use J somewhere else, you wouldn't know what value it will take somewhere else in your code. So in TypeScript, J is limited only to whatever scope it is defined in. Any variable is limited to whatever scope is defined in, if you define it using the let keyword. In normal JavaScript, you define using the var, but if you want to limit the scope, you define using the let. Okay, in TypeScript, you can also define variables using var, but just know that it will have the same problem of overflow like this. So what you do is just use let every time you want to make sure that it stays within its scope. Okay, so next one we're looking at is function types. In JavaScript, you could define a function with 4 variables, like a function whatever, and we have 4 parameters. We have name, email, password. Oops, what am I typing? Password. Okay, where there's this like this, when you want to call this function, you can afford to do this, and you may not have much errors. Just call only one of them. You can just say you can afford to do this. without having much errors. Okay, but in TypeScript you can't just call all the parameters are required by default. So in TypeScript you must add all these parameters. You must give a value to all these parameters for your function to work in TypeScript. So by default, and you must, in any variable declaration like here, you must enter the type of the variable. It's called typing. So you must enter the type of the variable. So anytime you're declaring a variable like here, first name, you must put this colon and say that first name is of the type string, comma, middle name. Here, if you want to enter a default parameter, a way to enter a default parameter is by using the equal sign and giving it a value. Alright, so we're saying here that if middle name was not entered, then make middle name to be partner. Alright, then the last one is the last name. The last name, if you want to make it optional in TypeScript, use this little question mark, and of course you put the type. Alright, so here, because the value is in quotes, TypeScript automatically knows that this is a string. Alright, so the first name is required. Once you don't enter any of these little manipulations, it is required by default. So you can call this function without at least one value. Alright, the next one is the middle name. If you call this function just like this, it will have two values, which is first name to be Dave and middle name to be partner. Then the last one is the last name. So here are variables. Here are valid and invalid ways to use this function that we have above now. Since only one parameter is required, we can use this function like this. Inside this function, we can have access to middle name and first name, because we have a default value for middle name, but last name won't have anything on last name. So the next one is, you can declare it like this, where you have Dave and partner, which is to declare the first and the middle name. Okay, then you can declare it like this, having three values, because you have three parameters. And if you have any of the parameters you don't want to enter a value for, you can always use undefined. Just type undefined there, or null. You can use any of these to indicate that yes, I know a value should be here, but I don't have any value for it. So you put null for any of them, especially the default parameters that you can't just keep. Alright, of course, if you call this this function this way, you have an error, because at least one of them is required. Alright, and then make sure that when you're declaring your function in TypeScript, the required values or parameters, the required parameters come first before any of the optional parameters. So if we have middle name, we have email, and email is required. Email should be here before any other one. So you enter the type, of course, string. What if we had phone number? That will be compulsory. We enter the type again, number. Alright, and what if we have what if it was an array? We can say maybe we have phone numbers or phones. We can enter the type to be array of numbers. Alright, what if it was an object that we can use? We can just enter the type to be object. So this is how to use methods in TypeScript. So the next thing we'll look at is the fat arrow function. In TypeScript, you can use classes, of course. Just like if you're comfortable with classes in Java or C#, TypeScript classes work almost exactly the same way. So the normal class, which you can just find in JavaScript. Alright, so you can declare a class like this, and the class will have a constructor. In case you're not comfortable with classes, a constructor is a function that runs by default whenever you make a call to that class. Alright, so we have this constructor here, and inside this constructor, let's just declare a member variable, which we call car name, and we've assigned it to the value of Volvo. And then we have for us to make reference, this is supposed to be car name. So alright, just know that all these things, if this is confusing you a little, just know that all these things will get easier as once I start using it. But I'm just trying to show you this before I start using it, so that you really understand it when I'm using it, okay? So, but if you're comfortable with classes, you will understand exactly what is going on here. So here, if we wanted to use make reference to this guy here, we would need to do some tricks or manipulation where we said we'll set, instead of using this here, because this has may have a different scope inside this new function, we will have to manipulate it so that we'll have to make a reference to this by assigning it to a variable of that. So we'll use that here, so it makes reference to this because we are using the keyword function. But in TypeScript, although you can do this and get away with it, but you know, it's kind of verbose. In TypeScript, there's a shorter form where you use this arrow function, okay? So once you use this arrow function, you can now make reference to this directly. You don't need to start assigning it to a special variable where you do all the manipulations. Just use, don't use the keyword function. So what we basically removed was the keyword function. We removed this function keyword, and we used this fat arrow function, which is basically an equal sign with a greater than sign. So when we have things like this, we can make reference to this this just straightforward, like we use it directly, okay? Then the next one we would see is kind of variable in templates, multi-line variables. Remember, if you're coding JavaScript, you remember this guy that you have to concatenate. If you want to if you have a long string that you want to assign to a single variable, for each time the line breaks, you have to use this to concatenate. For each line break, you concatenate each line break. So this is how you struggle with multi-lines in JavaScript, okay? ES5. But in TypeScript, you can just use the backtick. This is not the same as this. So this guy is your single quotes, which is beside your enter key on your keyboard. But this is the backtick, which is above your tab key, the tab key on your keyboard. So you use it once at the beginning, use it once at the end, then you can type all the lines in the world you want. No need to concatenate anything. Another way to use it, this is another deeper example which we'll be using more, is assuming we have two variables. We have let. I'm using let to declare it. Of course, you know I can use var, and I've told you the difference. So we have this variable guy here, let. I just put the name, e3 name to be delicious, and the dev delicious. This dev delicious e3. I can just e3. So we have this, and okay, let me just enter the city name to be Ohio. Okay, we have these two guys, and we want to make reference to them in HTML, but that HTML we're putting it inside a string. So we use this backtick to start, we use it to end, and we use this curly bracelets and this $sign to make reference to this variable e3 name, as you can see. So city name, we use the same method to make reference to city name. Just put it inside to call a curly bracelet. But in this Angular 2, we'll be making use of this more double curly bracelet. Instead of using that $sign, this will work too perfectly for us in Angular 2. Alright, so that's what we'll be using more. We'll be making use of it more. Okay, double bracelets, and automatically this guy is making reference to this guy. Alright, so thank you very much. The last thing we'll look at is promises. A promise is a way to write asynchronous functions in JavaScript. The promise expects something, runs an executor function. This is a function you want to run, and it expects a result which is probably success. If it's successful, it will give you a value. If there is an error, it will give you an error. If it fails, it will give you an error. If it's successful, it will give you a value. And but then it may not run immediately. So this function executes. Maybe you're trying to fetch something from the database, then this one is waiting. Once that fetch is complete, it gives you an output. So it's asynchronous. It doesn't just happen immediately. It can wait till there is a result that comes in, then it will give you throw an error or give you the value. It's a very powerful way to work, especially with APIs in JavaScript. So let's see an example. Let's say you want to fetch the list of cars from your database. This is the asynchronous function that returns the promise. So this function, this is a custom function that maybe I just called it fetch. As we go on, when we start using Firebase, you'll see the way Firebase does their own. So let's say this function, once you call it, it goes to database, a certain database, and fetches a list of cars. Alright, and when we fetch this list of cars, we'll say then. This then is a way to say if successful. We have a variable, save everything inside this whatever variable. I can call this anything. You can name the variable here anything, but that's a variable that will contain the values that will come from as a result of running this this function. Okay, so this is our executor function. Here is it. This is the executor function. We're saying dot then take this value, put everything inside this value, and then this is what we want to do with it. We want to return a JSON. We want to convert it to JSON. Alright, if you don't know what JSON is, don't worry, we'll see it as we use it practically. So we want to convert everything to JSON. Okay, and then if converting it was successful, then take it up and put whatever JSON you have inside another variable we call data. We can call it anything, whatever. Okay, then save it inside another variable we called cars, so we can make use of these cars somewhere in our code. Okay, and what if it fails? If it fails, catch the error. So we'll say dot catch error. You can name this error whatever. You can name it whatever name you want to call the error, but what it will do is to catch the error, and what we're trying to do is just say print out the error for us. So here will now be error whatever. So if there was an error trying to fetch the function, it will print it out for us. If there was an error converting it to JSON or whatever, just it will print it out for us. Okay, so this then is the resolve function. Then is the resolve function. Then catch is the reject function. There are a couple of other functions, like 4 to 5 more functions you could use here, but this one is okay. So thank you very much. See you in the next video tutorial where we dive directly into the next tutorial. Don't forget that if you need a book I've written on this to really understand more of this, you can pre-order it by leaving me an email here at davehozalo@gmail.com. So thank you. See you.